For the past 4 months, I've been using the Big Agnes Zoom UL sleeping pad for all of my trips, for camping, for backpacking, and I've got over a dozen nights of sleep on this pad from all sorts of different temperature ranges. Now this pad is amazing, but it's got one big problem that I want to talk about, and it may knock it from the top of the list as the best new pad on the market for 2023. So let's get into it. All right, welcome to the Backcountry Exposure Review Table. Let's talk about my experience with the Big Agnes Zoom UL sleeping pad. What I experienced on my first night of sleep with the Big Agnes Zoom UL is two things. One, I slept cold. Colder than I would have wanted to, knowing that I was sleeping in the teens. In fact, that night it got down to about 17 degrees Fahrenheit overnight, and I was cold on the pad. No way around it. The second thing that I came away from that first night of sleep is this pad is incredibly comfortable. And it has to do with the design and the construction of the pad, but at what threshold and what point does this pad equal out of not sleeping cold and being as comfortable as possible? So over my time of testing, I've come to the conclusion that this pad hits a certain point in temperature overnight where it is very comfortable and very warm. But let's talk about first the construction and the design aspects of this pad before we get into that big problem of the Big Agnes Zoom UL. So on the pad here, all of this quilting, all of this baffle design is a nice quilted type of design. You see this very similar to the Etherlight XT. In fact, from that previous video, I've had many questions asking me, is this more comfortable than the Etherlight XT? And having used both pads recently, I would put them at an equal level. I find both pads to be very equal in their comfort level, and the design lends to that aspect for both pads. The dimpling spreads the weight of your body out very well, whether you're sleeping on your back or your side or even stomach sleeping. And the bolstered sides at each side of the pad do allow it for your body to be pushed into the middle of the pad and just be as comfortable as possible. Now what we're working with here is the 25 by 72 inch size pad, which based off of Big Agnes's website, this comes in at a weight of 17 ounces. Now there happens to be some discrepancy of that 17 ounce weight based off of the stuff sack, the repair kit, and the included pump sack with this pad. So plus or minus, but right at about 17 ounces of weight, which makes this pad lighter weight than the NeoWear X-Lite NXT Max by about 2 ounces, and then even 5 ounces lighter than the Nemo Tensor. So this pad truly is something to consider when weight is a big deal to you in your sleep system, because I get a large pad that's going to create the most comfort possible, but also saving me the most weight possible. The height of the pad is also at 3 inches with 3¼ inches at the edges that allows for it to center your body on the pad a bit more. You've got a new valve system that I actually really enjoy that is an inlet outlet. It's got the one-way valve on there. You push the cap and the top into the valve to deflate, and that may end up being one of the cons that people have with this pad, is it doesn't deflate as fast as other sleeping pads. But what's an extra minute in your tent to have the pad deflate versus something that just dumps the air a lot faster? Not a huge deal to me. Some people, it is a big deal. The beam construction of this pad is using an O-beam construction, which the nice thing is these dimples, these baffles, they do not go all the way through, so you don't have those like cold spots that you have from some pads where that weld is right against itself and you have cold air that can move up against that and not be within the insulation. Now this pad does have 2 layers of insulation film inside of it, but that's where this big issue with the pad comes into play. They have ASTM rated this pad at 4.3 R value. I don't believe it. I do not feel like you can absolutely trust from the box what an R value is saying, because my experience says otherwise. My time with this pad, of the lowest temperature that I have slept on this pad is 14 degrees Fahrenheit, overnight low, and the highest overnight low that I have slept on the pad is 45 degrees Fahrenheit. So a big swing and a lot of time on the pad to get an idea at what point does the pad stay warm and keep me warm and not allow cold air come from the ground and such to come up against my back. Now that threshold for me, I've estimated, is roughly at about 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Safe to say you could probably take it down to freezing, so 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius, and you're going to be warm. Anything below that, do not take this pad. It is not going to keep you warm. Anytime that I've had this pad below freezing, I have been cold. Even with using a Nemo switchback closed cell foam pad underneath it for that added R value increase that you get from that barrier, I have not slept warm on the pad, and that is a problem. I think it is so important to make sure that you're looking around, doing your research, and not just taking R value ratings at face value. Real world conditions, they present so many other variables than I think the ASTM rating standard provides in that controlled environment. So right here, I've got the Big Agnes Rapide SL, which also has an R value of over 4. And my experience with this pad, it's got a different beam construction. O-beam for the Zoom UL, Rapide SL is using I-beam construction, and I sleep significantly warmer on this pad versus the Zoom UL. I think that has to do with two specific things. The beam construction doesn't allow for as many gaps in the insulation that is inside of this pad, and you're sleeping a little bit higher off of the ground. Those aspects are what I feel like make this pad sleep a lot warmer. Now this pad I've had into temperatures down below freezing consistently, and I have slept warm on this pad. Roughly the same R value, and I have slept warmer. I think it is so critical to, again, do your research and find out what people's actual experience is with a product before you just take something at face value and say, well, it says it's a 4.3 R value, so that must mean that I can take it below freezing and I'm going to enjoy myself. That has not been the case for me, and so that's why I'm sharing this comparison here. So with all of that said, the Big Agnes Zoom UL is still my favorite pad that I have used in all of 2023, and comparing to the pads that I've used over the past year or so compared to the Etherlite XT, the Rapide SL. For the weight savings that you get compared to the Rapide, this is a fantastic option. But I now know that I cannot and will not take this pad into temperatures below freezing because I don't want to sleep cold. So if I know that that's going to be the case, I'm going to take the weight penalty and carry the Rapide SL with me so that I can guarantee that I'm going to sleep warm into those lower temperatures than what the Zoom is able to provide. Overall, the Zoom is fantastic, and in comparison to my experience with the NeoAir, way more comfortable. In my experience compared to the Tensor, I think it is a more comfortable pad. This thing is fantastic. Big Agnes Zoom UL, that's my long-term-ish review of this pad. I think it's absolutely worth the investment. Thanks for watching today, guys. If you're not subscribed to the channel, you know what to do. Hope you have an awesome day. We'll catch you on the next one. See you later.